Good evening. This is a meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow. Will you please rise with me as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing. As most of you know, we remember those members of our community who have passed on since our last meeting. And since our last meeting, we lost Ellen Marshall Scoley, and my apologies to her family if I'm mispronouncing the last name, resident of Kendall Way. Carol Friedman, at the age of 81, beloved mother of our recreation supervisor, Robin Pell. Thoughts with Robin. Julio Montero, at the age of 75, a former Sleepy Hollow resident, passed away quite unexpectedly as well. And sadly, Luis Matos, at the age of 53, former Sleepy Hollow resident, Sleepy Hollow High School student, and graduate, I should say, retired Master Sergeant in our Air Force, and has many friends and family who still reside in Sleepy Hollow today. And our thoughts are with all of them as they try to absorb this loss. Thank you. Please be seated. I should note that the governor of the state of New York has continued to allow through his executive order the participation through telephonic means. We have two of our board members who are participating in that manner this evening, Deputy Mayor Glenn Rosenblum and Trustee Sam Gonzalez. I would also note that the code of the Village of Sleepy Hollow allows for board members to participate through telephonic means as well. So we have a complete board here this evening. First up on our agenda is a warrant which was distributed earlier by our treasurer. It's in the amount of $721,000.51. If there are any questions from the board, please direct those to the treasurer.
Move adoption of the warrant. Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Please note that both Glenn and Sam voted aye. So that was unanimous, and the warrant is approved.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have the minutes of September 22nd of this year, which are also distributed earlier to members of the board. Are there any amendments or edits, requested changes to the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Please note that the vote was unanimous and the minutes are approved. I have a few announcements. An important one for the whole village is this Saturday, you've heard us talk about something that we refer to as LOSAP, a Length of Service Awards Program. And it is something that this entire board is strongly urging you to vote yes on that. There's an election on two matters, and that is this Length of Service Awards program for members of our volunteer fire department and members of our volunteer ambulance corps. And it's a way of providing a small amount of money in their retirement years, not really a pension, but something that acknowledges the sacrifice that they made over the years to be there for us when we needed them. So it's our opportunity, and I believe, and all the members of this board believe, it's our obligation to pass this and make sure that we have this plan in place for them. We've also noted that this plan is something that we hope will help us not only retain current volunteers, but help them recruit additional volunteers in the years to come. And that is a crucial thing to our village. So we urge you to get out. The polls are open here at Village Hall from 9 to 3. There's 2 measures on the ballot, and we urge you to vote yes on both of those. And appropriately enough, October, which begins in 2 days, is Fire Prevention Month. So as you're voting to support your fire department, remember to do the simple things like check the batteries in your smoke detector. And if you don't have a smoke detector, get one. And a carbon monoxide detector too. But check that, and it's an opportunity to be more aware of those things. Lastly, we had a question from a number of village residents about leaf blowers, especially since the leaves are starting to fall from the trees as we enter what looks like is going to be a really great fall. And there is a ban on all leaf blowers that is currently in place. We have one in our code that bans all gas-powered leaf blowers through the summer months and into September. But last spring, when the coronavirus was first taking off and we were acutely aware of the fact that it was transferred through the air, we thought it appropriate to ban leaf blowers. Like, why add that much more stuff in the air? And there's a lot of crap, quite literally, that gets blown into the air by leaf blowers. So we banned them, and no one should be using them. And I'm going to ask the board now that we're entering into the fall and the leaves are starting to drop, if it makes sense to lift that ban. It was done through an order through the authority that I had by declaring not a state of emergency, but a village emergency, which allowed us to do a number of other things in the fall too, regarding parking and other stuff. So I can simply change it by rescinding that order, and I would ask the board for your thoughts on that right now. I'll come back to that later on in the meeting, but think about that, and we'll go from there. I also want to note that the census it's the final date to respond to the census has been moved around a few times, and the feds had decided that it would end on September 30th. We've been given, originally they had extended it to the end of October. Then someone changed his mind and said, we'll make it the end of September, and a judge has overruled that decision. And so the census is going to be open to the end of October, which is good news for villages like ours. We really need to get our numbers up. If you haven't filled out the census yet, please do. If you're not going to fill out the census, you don't think it's that important to you, I would ask that you send your contribution made out to the Village of Sleepy Hollow in the amount of $2,700 this year and the next 9 years, and we'll live with that. But that's each family, not for neighborhoods, but that's what it means to the Village of Sleepy Hollow. And if there are more than one person in your household, we'll be expecting to see the $2,700 for each person in your household. So I'm sure our treasurer looks forward to seeing that. She's probably quite excited, I'm sure. I would say, all kidding aside, look, come on, folks, it takes you about 10 minutes. fill out your census, make sure that we count. It's really, really important to us and our future. And thank you to all the folks that have filled out their census already. All right, we're going to move on to reports, department reports, and this evening we're going to hear a report from Mr. McCarthy about our building department.
Good evening, everyone. This is actually, we're backtracking a little bit. I'm going to give you a little bit of a report going back to August, and because it's already late in September, I'll give you some updates on what's been going on this month, too. But last month, we issued 97 permits in the village, which is unusually high. 39 were building permits, 26 electrical, 7 mechanical permits, 13 plumbing permits, and 12 tree removal permits. It's also a very high number of certificates of occupancy. We issued 70 in the month. Another high number is the number of title searches, which was 14. Again, unusually high for the past 3 months. That work brought in just over $30,000. Unfortunately, that's on the low side. So we had a lot of activity, but it just goes to show it's a lot of smaller projects going on. On our expenditure side, we just spent a little bit over $700. In August, the zoning board didn't meet and the planning board didn't meet. But since then, the zoning board also didn't meet in September, but the planning board met actually last week. At the planning board meeting in September, the board approved a subdivision for the National Trust up on the Rockefeller Estate, and they also approved a one-lot subdivision down Monroe Avenue in the Manor. Following up actually next month, the planning board will be meeting on October 22nd, and that meeting will also be a Zoom meeting. As you just mentioned, Mr. Mayor, the board will be comfortable meeting as a video conference instead of live. And at that meeting, there will be a continued public hearing for the Edge on Hudson Waterfront Open Space Plan, the first phase of that project. There's also a continued public hearing on the project on Andrews Lane, 30 Andrews Lane, which is a 9-unit townhouse development. Hopefully that's nearing the end. There's also going to be a new public hearing for a revised amended site plan for the Block F project down at Edge on Hudson. And essentially what that is that the final plans for the Hines development project ended up having more parking spaces than what they originally were approved by the planning board. In order to keep the record clear, they're coming back to the board and disclosing what those parking spaces will be used for. And in this particular case, there's 50 additional spaces proposed in that parking garage. There's going to be 32 that are going to be allocated for another block and 18 going to be allocated for another block in the subsequent phasing of the project. So it's just another way of trying to maximize the potential of the parking down there and using it for shared purposes. And then also we have another 2-lot subdivision on Weber Avenue that will have a public hearing as well. So on the development side, there's obviously a lot of work going on down at the river. We have the framing for all 3 Block I apartment buildings is underway. And actually the middle building is actually up to the 3rd floor and should be starting the 4th floor framing within another week or so. Those 3 buildings comprise 180 apartments. Also, the interior mechanical systems for the first condominium building, the E Block building, is underway. Right now, we have 22 townhouses that are fully under construction. There's been 5 certificates of occupancy issued. We're actually going down tomorrow for CO inspections on 2 more units. So hopefully that all goes well. And then finally, the pile driving for the Heinz building should be ending this week. Should be, I promise. They've actually started to form up the pile caps, and the first pour of concrete is scheduled for this Friday, which is another good thing. As far as the rest of the site development, the Phase 3 infrastructure is underway. Right now, most of the stormwater system is in, and we're just waiting on approval from the health department for the water lines, and then they'll be installed soon thereafter. Finally, under code enforcement, we received 22 complaints back in August. 12 violations were issued and 4 appearance tickets. And that's what's been going on in the building department. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. McCarthy?
Yeah, Sean, I have a question about Andrews Lane. Can you just tell us what the problems are with that particular project? It seems to be in public hearing for several months now.
Sure. And it has no fault to the planning board. We've been waiting since May for information from the applicant that would resolve open issues that the planning board, as well as myself and the consultant, engineer, and village planner have asked for. And hopefully, we receive that information within the next week or so that we could forward our comments to the planning board for final resolution.
So does that correlate with keeping a public hearing open? I'm not sure
Yes.
if I understand that.
Yes. So they can't close the public hearing until essentially they're comfortable with that all the comments have been addressed. And there has been
Right.
several that have been open, and,
And they're related to the issues you're talking about?
I'm sorry?
Are they related to the issues that you're talking about?
Yes,
The items you said?
Oh.
Okay.
yes.
And I would note, I was a participant in the last planning board meeting on a separate matter, and I thought the chair was rather blunt,
Clear, yeah.
clear with the applicant and saying, hey, we don't have this, we're not going to talk about it tonight because it's really difficult for us to move forward when you haven't responded on these different things. And essentially a pretty strong get your act together kind of statement. Hopefully for the next meeting that will do the trick, and we'll get to see that thing move off of
Yes.
public hearings and
And
into
many of
some,
the
bricks
items
and
that
mortar.
are still open are statutory requirements that are part of the application package and information that is needed by the planning board to rule on approval. Speaking for the planning board, I think everybody's in favor to move this project forward.
Right.
But their hands are a little bit tied until those documents are fulfilled. So we're pushing to get that done and get it off the agenda and really get something going out there.
Sean, can you update us on what's happening with the 2 developments up here at Beekman Avenue, please?
Sure. I actually
And
had a
on
meeting.
Broadway?
Yes, I had a meeting today with the architect, the owner, and the contractor regarding the former sushi restaurant. Again, we were awaiting a change in their plans. They ran into somewhat of a snag with a utility when they were excavating, and they contemplated trying to move the utility. It's actually a Con Ed manhole, to be exact. And obviously, we all know that that's very expensive and time-consuming, so we finally convinced them to move forward by revising the scope of their work, which they agreed to today. And so we actually gave them permission or somewhat demanded that they continue on with the rest of the work while those plans are being revised. And they all seem to be in favor of doing that. The former Horseman Diner, again, they went through a small change with the facade. They decided to move forward by fully replacing all the brick on the front of the building, as opposed to a synthetic stucco treatment that would have covered up some problems. So they decided to move forward with that, and I think it'll be a better solution. So there's a little bit of a delay with that, but they're also, I believe, back on board to continue.
So they should all be resuming soon?
Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for comments? Thank you, Mr. McCarthy.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, Sam, Glenn? Good? Okay. Thank you, Mr. McCarthy.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll move on to public comments. If you wish to address the board, please use the microphone in the middle of the room, and please note you are restricted to 3 minutes.
So I have to talk fast?
Be concise.
Good evening, Mayor Ray and the Board of Trustees. My name is Cheryl Capello, and I live at 18 Continental Street. I'm here tonight to discuss my concerns about fire pits in our village. As I stated, I live at 18 Continental Street, and my home was built in 1875, and my house and 20 Continental Street are so close together that you cannot fit a person in between our two houses. The distance between the front of the house is 1 foot 1 inch, and the rear of the house is 1 foot 3 inches. Whoop, I'm getting foggy. I am not against fire pits, as I have been to homes who have fire pits and chimneys. However, I am concerned about the safe use and proper distancing from my property line when in use. On Sunday, September 20th, the tenants at 20 Continental Street had a fire pit in their backyard. Flames were quite large, and the screen was not on the fire pit while in use. I have a video on my phone that I can show you later if you'd like to look at it. I heard tearing of plastic bag and something being put into the fire. I could not see what it was. That evening was a little breezy, and sparks were going up in the air. The fire pit was close to the fence by my property line, which now has morning glories growing up on it. Also near a picket fence in their backyard, there's a wooden shed structure on the property that lines and attaches to their house, and 2 wooden porches and a wooden carport. Not to mention that my bedroom window faces the backyard and the smoke comes in my window. I'm worried about their knowledge of using the fire pit and how to properly put a fire pit out. Who is watching that the embers are not reigniting or blows out of the fire pit and starts a fire when they go back inside? The fire was raging at 12:40 a.m., and at 1 a.m. the fire was out and no one was outside. Can we please come up with restrictions on the use of fire pits in the areas where our houses were built in 1875 and that our neighborhood is not in jeopardy? Possibly a permit with the building department approval to have the fire pit in their yard if the requirements work for their yard. There needs to be considerations for your neighbor who could have health issues, and burning a fire pit and the fumes are not going into their house. Lastly, have we not learned how people can cause a fire, i.e. gender reveal in California that took out a large portion of the state by a simple error, and years back when people used to go camping and started a campfire and didn't know how to properly put out the fire and cause forest fires? Thank you for your consideration in this matter.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I have pictures if anybody wants to see what the fire looked like and how close my house is.
Please give him to Mr. Giaccio. I'm going to bring that up under the question you raised under new business later on this evening. Would anyone else like to address the board? Okay. You're well within the 3 minutes, by the way. Don't let it go to your head. All right, we'll move on to, we just have a couple of resolutions this evening. I'll just pardon me for not announcing this earlier. The board's going to have an executive session, or if it votes to go into executive session, we'll have one at the end of this meeting to discuss negotiations. And I do not expect any action to be taken during that meeting, but we'll do that at the end of our regular business. So we have 2 resolutions. Could someone read the first one, please?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I have a change to the first, an update of the first resolution.
Okay.
Want me to read it? I'll read it.
Thank
Thank you. I can just read the first, I don't have to, the documentation. Okay.
Pages 38 through,
Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow accepting contribution of Margaret Horan statue and maintenance funds. Whereas the Historical Society, and Armando Galella have entered into a fiscal sponsorship agreement pursuant to which Galella will acquire from Andrew Chernak Sculptor, 1, a bronze statue depicting Margaret Horan, mother of John Horan, who was killed in action at Pearl Harbor. 2, a permanent plaque indicating that the statue is of Margaret Horan and that this is an inclusive symbol of all mothers who have lost a child in the service of the United States. 3, a bronze photograph of John Horan. 4, a plaque that provides information about local soldiers and directs the reader to the Historical Society. 5, a plaque that is a fallen soldier memorial and recites the battlefield cross. Statue, and whereas pursuant to the agreement, the society will raise funds to pay for the statue, and any funds raised in excess of the cost of the statue will be contributed to the village for the care and maintenance of the statue and its site. And whereas the society and Galella have asked the village for assurance that it will allow the statue to be erected on village property at Horan's Landing, and whereas the Board of Trustees has reviewed a narrative and seen a photograph of the statue, copies of which are attached. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the village will allow erection of the statue on village property at Horan's Landing, and further resolved that the village will accept ownership of the statue following its erection, and be it further resolved that the village will leave the statue in place for at least 50 years, excuse me, and be it further resolved that any funds contributed to the village for the care and maintenance of the statue and its site will be held by the village for the exclusive care and maintenance of the statue and its site. And be it further resolved that the statue is not erected at Horan's Landing by December 31st, 2021. The foregoing resolution shall be null and void. So moved.
Seconded.
moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Please note that the vote was unanimous. We'll move on to our second resolution, awarding the bid for the Continental Street Sewer Project.
Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow awarding bid for the Cortlandt Street Sewer Project. Whereas the village duly solicited bids for the Cortlandt Street Sewer Project, and whereas the lowest bidder for this project was Jokin Development Corporation of White Plains, New York, with a bid amount of $491,055. And whereas all bids have been reviewed by Han Engineering, who determined this bid to be acceptable and has recommended its approval. And whereas funds have been allocated for this project in the capital budget and through a community development block grant. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees herein awards the bid for the Cortlandt Street Sewer Project to Jokin Development Corporation of White Plains, New York, with a bid amount of $491,055. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? Nays? Please note that the vote was unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to anybody have any old business? Okay, new business. I just wanted to raise a question about the issue about the fire pits, and I'd just like to talk about that. That I know that we do allow them, and they're supposed to be a particular, I believe, a particular kind of space, and they're supposed to have a top over them, a screen so that embers can't fly around and things like that. Listening to the issue in one of the older parts of the village, I didn't realize 1875, but yeah, and it's, if you look at many of our downtown streets or older downtown streets, Continental Street being a prime example, the houses are really close together. And as we know from a really horrendous fire on Beekman a few years ago. Wood frame buildings rather, go up pretty quick, and the ones that are close to them go right along with them. We were really fortunate. Really good job by our fire department to stop that one with only 2 buildings being destroyed and another one virtually destroyed. So it goes really fast. And I understand the concern about that. And I would like the board to explore that and see, is this something that we can allow? It is something that we can allow only in particular neighborhoods. And I don't want to get into some privilege thing. It's like, oh, well, I live in Phillips Manor and my lot is 150 feet wide, and so I can have one and you can't. And but it's not about privilege. It's about public safety, and it's about safeguarding the lives and the property of village residents. And I would like to explore that with the board and see if there's something that we could do. I mean, we've been careful. We've been fortunate, but all it takes is one careless person or one person who's not really paying attention, and we could have a tragedy on our hands. So, your thoughts?
Maybe we could ask, since you had mentioned the fire department, that it's Fire Prevention Month, you said October is? Maybe we could ask the fire department to possibly do like a PSA type of little video thing on fire safety, on fire pits, smoke detectors, that sort of thing. And I don't know, maybe they could make it fun, post it on, not fun, but informative and maybe fun to look at on Facebook and our website.
Could do certainly an
That could be
education
circulated.
program. I think, we included some videos from California. It might bring it home to folks about just how dangerous this can be.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, engaging them in the conversation to say, let's take a look at this, and maybe we need to readjust a little bit based on the circumstances with what's been brought forth, but also, just in general. I think they'll be able to give us a lot of insight. And then again, take it to the point where you're educating and you're informing and you're teaching is all a piece of that, but it's very critical that they're a part of the whole conversation.
Mhm.
I agree, and we should take a look at it, because this is
And I
This
think
is hard
that,
to look at when you think of a fire,
I think it'd be nice to know what the best practices are, like, what are other municipalities
Mhm.
requiring when you have a fire pit? The screen seems pretty reasonable to have over it so that the embers aren't flying around, but, is there some type of requirement for, distance from another structure, et cetera?
Mhm.
Mr. John.
Yeah, I'm dying to talk right now.
Please.
So flying brands have no discrimination when it comes to what neighborhood they're in. If they fly through the air at night, they're going to land on something. So I think we should have one code for the whole village, and it should be, we probably already have one. Sean seems to be nodding a little bit. If you want to add something, Sean, please do. I don't expect you to recite it offhand, but you might be able to. So if you want to step up. But I believe, as a former firefighter, that we should have one code for the whole village. And it can be very dangerous. If there's no spark arrestor on top of the fire pit, it could be, listen, a lot of people are home this summer. It's getting cold now because of the pandemic. Everybody wants to enjoy the backyard. But it's just, it could be very dangerous and tragic, especially in your case. I looked at those pictures, and you have a beautiful house, but they're so close together, and it's almost,
See the video of the actual fire.
yeah,
But those pictures don't show any justice to the fire because they did not have the screen on it. You saw the sparks
Right.
go up in the air. And I did not sleep all night because every 15 minutes I was
Right.
looking out the window because it scared me.
And the question I have is, as somebody like yourself, what do you do if this happens? It can happen in any neighborhood. So can you call 911? Can you contact somebody that night if you feel like you can't go to sleep because of a fire burning next to your house? So these are all things that I think Sean might be able to help us with.
Cheryl,
That-
wait until you get elected, and then you can,
But
but that's over there.
So,
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So the village code is silent when it comes to portable fireplaces. And I believe that's what we're talking about right now. However, we would regulate a permanently placed fireplace structure, and that's governed by our zoning ordinance, which is pretty good there. So we can actually establish setback requirements and the size of these structures. What regulates it is the New York State Fire Code, Section 307.4.3, which says that a portable fireplace
knew that.
has to be at least 15 feet from a structure or from combustible material.
That's
So,
the New York State's law. I just want to make sure that gets emphasized. The New York State law says 15 feet.
15 feet from a structure or combustible material. So in a lot of cases in the inner village, that automatically kind of outrules them, because wherever you move it around on some of these smaller properties, you can't have it. The problem is there, like many things in the code, there's a lot of exceptions. And the one that hurts us the most is the exception for 1 and 2 family residences, where there is no requirement. So that's a problem. It also does not regulate any time that you could operate them. Our own village code does not require any open burning, so that comes back to having a fire pit with a screen on it or a top is permitted. The requirement for the positioning of it on the property falls under the fire code. So if you're thinking of trying to put some restrictions on this, you'd have to do what's called a more restrictive law, which would have to be filed with the state, which would supersede their requirements. In a case like the village, like our sprinkler code, we had a very good case, as Richie could vouch for, that because of the nature of the inner village and the proximity of homes and the type of construction, you may have a good case to implement something like that. So right now, that's the requirements that we have to follow in enforcing that, although limited in a sense. There is one other thing in our code, and that has to do with the requirements for, atmospheric pollution, and that comes into the smoke. At any point in time, if the smoke is extending onto another property, which is causing a nuisance, it can be shut down. And a lot of times, because these things are portable and they do move around, so we really can't pinpoint a violation in that sense. If the smoke is causing a nuisance, at any point in time, we always inform a neighbor or a complainant, contact the police department. They will call out the fire department, someone from my department, and we would check into it then. That's unfortunately the only requirements we have right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So if I'm getting that right, a code change would require a public hearing anyway, and we'd have to say what the code change was going to be, notice for that, have the public hearing. And it sounds like if we're going to make it, because if we applied it to 1 and 2 family homes, that makes it, if we applied it to 1 and 2 family homes, that would make it more restrictive than the state. So what would be, if we wanted to do this and following John's strong suggestion that whatever we have apply to everybody throughout the village is just one code, would we, if we did that and said we want to restrict it, do we apply to the state first? Do we have a public hearing on a local code change? Do we do them simultaneously?
Excuse me, I believe, I'm not certain, but I believe you would apply.
Sarah, can you pass over your not very well used microphone there? So,
I
Thank you.
believe you would apply to the state first. I don't know if I'm wrong, you can correct me, but he says I'm right. He often does it even when I'm wrong, though.
He doesn't do that for us.
But I believe we would prepare something, you would send it up to them. They may ask for changes, they may say no, they may ask for changes. And then you would, if they ask for small changes, would make the changes, then you'd put it on for a public hearing.
And we would have to have a specific request that we're making to the
Yeah.
state, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I would say send the state a form of local law
Okay.
before you've adopted it, but the form of local law.
So if I could just add, it almost seems like this state law with the fire code is adequate because the 15 feet applies right now,
Not to 1 and 2 family.
not to 1 and 2 family. Okay,
They are exempt.
okay.
So it would be.
Who else would be burning fire pits? Who else would be burning fire pits? But maybe businesses, I don't know. But, okay, we should look at it.
What I'd like to do is, let's take a look at the state one next week and see if we can adopt that, or if we can have it in a form of a local law to say it has to be 15 feet. We're not asking for anything that, as I understand it, that's any different than what's already there. We're just applying it to all all buildings in the village.
That's correct.
Good?
Yes.
Okay, and then we take a look at that, and if it seems to do the trick, then, you know, we give you car fare and you head off to Albany. Okay, any other new business? All right.
I just had a question, Anthony. I think you got an email probably this week from a local business owner who, again, is concerned about the speed of the traffic down at Lower Beekman, especially around Hudson Street. And we had another business owner come in before the pandemic, I'm going to say last fall, and he very eloquently explained what the issues were in both directions because of the new traffic circle. And right now there's a lack of cars down there parking because the businesses are suffering, but it's become a real speed zone. And I know the police chief's not here tonight, but I want to follow up with him personally and just see what he can do in the short term. But we do have a speed hump policy. People's first reaction is we need a speed hump, but there's other means of slowing traffic down, perhaps a center island on Beekman in that area, a raised crosswalk, which would kill a couple of birds with one stone, and aesthetically might look nice. So these are things I want to revisit. I know we've all been busy with other things, but this came up in a meeting, and I don't think we really gave it the fair attention that it deserves, because I was down there today, and I saw cars flying, trucks, the whole 9 yards. So if we could just come up with something, I'll look at the speed hump policy again. I think Beekman might be one of the streets that we said we wouldn't put one on. But there are other means. There's a lot of traffic calming measures that can be used in an area like that. So I'm sure we can get EDGE involved as a stakeholder to help us, perhaps, if there's some costs. So, I'd like to take the lead on this, but also I just want to make sure that the board is okay with, proceeding with this.
I think a raised crosswalk would be a great idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of things we can do, and that aesthetically really looks nice, too. So, all right.
I think you have the backing of the board. You obviously can reach out to any of us if you want any assistance on this, but.
Thank you.
Thanks, John, for taking this. Let me rephrase that. It's not that just that the board backs you on taking the lead. I think the board supports the idea of figuring out a way to slow people down.
Thanks.
Any other new business? Okay, we'll move on to public comments. Would anyone like to address the board? You can, okay, now, but, okay, all right. Then, as I said earlier, I'd like, communications, yeesh, sorry.
Okay. I was going to catch your attention. So, yes, Chris Masiak wrote an email regarding speeding on Lower Beekman and his concerns. I believe you were referring to Gary Serena. He was here
Yeah,
back
Gary
in
was here,
February
yeah.
from Hudson.
Was that
and
February?
Yeah, it was right
Okay.
before COVID. Yeah.
Seems
and,
like a long time ago, but
They,
Pandemic.
yeah. It was same concerns, speeding
Right.
on Lower Beekman. So if we haven't already done so, we'll forward you this email. Also got a communication from Anthony Landy of 400 Old Broadway regarding the Statue Island. I'll forward that to you as well. Oscar Rodriguez also sent an email regarding the boardwalk, people walking in the boardwalk not socially distancing properly and some not wearing masks. I'll forward that to you as well. There was several emails that came in from New Broadway residents regarding parking spaces on New Broadway, and I shall send that to you as well. Emails I got was from Sonia Monroe, Justina Groger, and Tina Constantino Ryan. Also, Eleanor DeFelice also called regarding paving on Quarrybrook Road. And Mr. Alberto De Carvalho from North Washington, he also spoke to us about requesting a speed hump on North Washington.
And we gave them the policy to follow that procedure.
Okay.
And finally, Ann White of Kendall Way, she sent an email, I believe you might have gotten this already, regarding community safety review and plan. She also asked that the board consider reinstating the Zoom option at the meetings for residents that cannot attend. And that is all.
Thank you. And
Sure.
all of those are being, many of those that you mentioned were received by some of us or all of us, but please make sure that
Sure.
follow through on what you said you were going to do, which is just, give them, make sure that we get them all.
So if I can just identify with one of them on North Washington, it
Yes.
sounds like it's the same thing about the speed humps. Because I also had a resident confront me on a speeding issue that they're having there, and there's also a one-way. It's very awkward when you come down Howard. Is that the area that he's talking about,
Yes, it's
Alberto?
at the end of North Washington and Howard.
Yes, so, because there's two different things going on. So knowing that you're going to be speaking with the chief on the other, with Lower Beekman, maybe we take a look at that. And then there was also another one that was also, I don't know if it was ever addressed with the chief. It was very close to the high school. I want to call it Weber Avenue or something. They wanted to put in a speed hump or a bump. I'll have to look for it. It was right before, in February, or January and February, but I'll look at it. But it was the same kind of thing. There was a resident that was very concerned that they were blowing a stop sign. And it was parallel to the high school, and I'd like to take a look at that. Maybe Paula, you can help me look for that. I know it was an important one, and the chief was concerned about it because there was a certain distance and you had to measure it as to whether that you can do it with the
I
angle.
vaguely remember the chief going out there and it didn't qualify for a speed hump, but we could double check.
Can we just, if
Yeah.
it doesn't, I don't know, I don't feel like it was, I'd like to just have the answer to that
Yeah.
and make sure that the resident was contacted. So
so,
that we kind of cover
yeah.
all of it at the same time on the topic.
Paul, if you could forward me the email from Mr. Gonzalez about Howard and,
It's Alberto.
okay.
in person.
Do you mean Mr. Rodriguez?
Yeah, the one on Howard, the
Oh.
speed hump request for Howard.
Oh,
He
Mr.
came in
Carvalho.
person.
Oh, okay. So if I,
Oh,
That's a one-way heading towards New Broadway. I'm sorry, North Washington.
Yes.
It's North Washington.
Is there a stop sign at that corner?
So what happened, there is, they blow it. So
Well,
then
that's, okay.
So they come around, but there's also another consideration. What they do is a lot of the cars from the one-way, because you can go and park in the back area.
Right.
They will speed all the way through from way back. So it doesn't even have anything to do with Howard. So there's
Okay.
two intersections, and you really need to take a look at it.
Right.
Because I've seen it, and it's a lot of the kids that are revving their cars,
Mm-hmm.
and people can't even back out of there. I mean, I lived on that block. I know
Mhm.
exactly what he's talking about. So I'm glad at least someone's bringing it up, because it was
Yeah.
at one point a consideration to put a temporary one there to see how
Yeah.
effective it would be. I don't know if it should be on Howard or North Washington. I couldn't tell you where the cause is coming from.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll speak to the chief because a lot of times he may have an idea of mitigating a
yes.
problem without constructing a speed hump,
Exactly.
you know? So, okay.
Great, thank you. So I guess those three.
Cool. It's one of the most constructive and productive new business agenda items we've ever had. It's, all right. Now I'll move on past communications. Give folks a chance to speak to the board if you'd so like. And if not, if there are no public comments, then I would ask for a motion to go into executive session.
The leaf blowers?
The what?
Oh.
Oh. You guys, thank you for reminding me. You have any thoughts, Glenn, Sam as well? Folks here about leaf blowers?
Oh.
And to remind everyone, we ban gas-powered leaf blowers in the summertime, which means in the summer, in a normal year, you can use electric-powered leaf blowers. And then this time of year, we drop the ban on gas-powered, and you can use whatever you want. You're even allowed to use a rake. So we'll have to remind people what those look like. What are your feelings about the leaf blower ban? We could, what are your thoughts?
Honestly, I thought it was lifted already.
I'm
I
fine,
think
Because-
October 1st, I think, right? Is
I'm-
when it's supposed.
fine with bringing it
I'm fine
back.
with lifting the ban.
I'm fine with lifting the ban.
Well, I am going to, I've heard enough. Thank you. Glenn and Sam seem to like nod their heads or something.
I'm totally okay with the use of leaf blowers.
Okay,
So am I, especially electric.
okay. Then, council, I issued this order banning leaf blowers, and so do I just say I'm lifting the ban?
You can, you should put it in writing as well. But you can state now that you're gonna lift it.
I'm lifting the ban effective tomorrow, so nobody runs out there right now. But effective tomorrow, we'll go back to what's listed in the village code.
Which includes times of operation.
Including times of operation.
Uh-huh.
I will look, I believe there was, I know that there was something on the website, the village website. Was there a written document?
As of October 1st, the gas powder leaf blowers ban reinstates to normal schedule until the first Friday of the, until the last Friday before Memorial Day weekend.
So during this period of time, people were not supposed to be using any kind of leaf
So
blower.
as of October 1st, yes.
But during
gas
this
powder.
ban, they weren't supposed to be even using the
Right.
electric ones and so on. So we will go back to what's stated in the village code effective tomorrow.
And I will look and see and get you what you need.
Okay, and putting this in writing is something I can do in an email to the clerk.
I'll prepare something.
That'd be great, thank you.
Yeah, and then you will follow the plan.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you all. Now, can I get a motion to go into executive session to discuss negotiations?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, opposed or abstentions? All right, this is an executive session of the Board of Trustees. And
I could call a silence. Get some-
And I expect that when we end the executive session, we will come back just to formally end it and then formally end our meeting, and we will take no further business this evening. So thank you all and good night.